Good morning, everybody. Back by popular demand at this boot camp, I have been being asked about tack talk, and we are here today for tack talk. First and foremost, understand that every piece of tack is just a tool to communicate, help you communicate with your horse of what you are asking. So they can be super useful. Just night and day differences and really change your whole horsemanship experience if you can simply clear up the talk between you and your horse. All the time we have a situation where the horse is not doing the right thing. All we do is take the bridle out of their mouth and give the person another bridle and put it in their mouth. It's fixed. Because you're simply saying what you are looking for, what you are asking. Where they run into an issue is when the horse isn't educated enough to give the pressure and you magnify that horse not understanding. So the horse doesn't, you haven't taught the horse to stop. Horse does not stop. And then you were putting a bigger bridle to stop them. Well, they already don't stop. They don't give to pressure because they're not stopping. And now we magnify the pressure on them. That's when you're going to get the flip overs. That's when you're going to get the explosions, the bucks, the real horrid behavior. It's not horrid behavior. It's just horse behavior. If you were walking down the street and somebody who doesn't speak your language came up to you and started talking to you and approaching you and talking to you and you didn't, they started getting louder and louder and approaching you, at some point you're going to do one of two things. You're going to try to evade and turn around and get away, or you're going to try to cross the street, but you're going to try to get away. Or you're going to get defensive and pop them one in the kneecap. Like one of the two things is going to happen. I guess you could pepper spray them first. But they may be telling you how pretty your hair is. They might be telling you, how nice you look or looking for directions, but you don't understand, and they're getting closer and louder to the point that you're looking for a way out. It's exactly what happens to horses all over the world when they don't have the foundation, the understanding of how to give to pressure, and then we multiply that pressure, we magnify that pressure. It gets to a place where they just can't take it. So we're going to take you through our process of start to finish through our bridles and what we're looking for. Think about it like this. The greenest horse, the less educated they are, the more margin of error you have. A toddler should have more margin of error allowance than a teenager. A teenager has more margin of error allowance than a 40-year-old, so on and so forth. The more of a professional you become, it gets where you can't say words. You can't say the wrong word, you'll get canceled. So the level of expectation goes up the more educated you get. Likewise with a horse. So that's why we start everything with our halters. Our halters are made out of rope. So the whole thing is bendable and flexible. So they really have to get to the end of their line before it starts getting uncomfortable. They really have to start getting to their limits, to their boundaries before they start getting uncomfortable. So you are going to have the least amount of just horrid explosions because they get in the most margin of error here. So this is a great place. And instead of communicating to them on a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch piece of steel on their gums, think about how sensitive your gums would be when they don't know how to give the pressure yet. You're communicating on their whole face and head. When I grab a hold of this on a colt that doesn't know any better, I'm grabbing his face, his head, his whole head, and I'm trying to turn it this way. So if I'm going to have to pull, which you're going to, no horse has ever been started that didn't get pulled on that learned how to give the pressure. You know how you get a horse to give the pressure is you have to pressure them. Right. There's no two ways about it. So for me, I find it kinder to pressure their whole face if we're going to have a conversation. And then once they know how to give the pressure, once they know when this lead rope picks up, turn your head left. When that left rein comes away from you, when that left hand comes away from you, whenever we pull this way, your head goes this way and you won't be uncomfortable. Once they understand that, that's when I'm switching to this. So we've already got them, usually for us, walk, trot, cantering. They're already turn left, turn right. We can ride them over obstacles, things like that. We're doing that. They're already comfortable with us on their back. So we're riding them with this. Then we switch to a snaffle. All different kinds of configurations. But basically a snaffle is referring to anything that breaks in the center, has a single joint. The more a bridle bends and folds and gives, it goes right into the margin of error. There's a lot of margin of error when they bend and they fold, and there's a lot of room for them. So most people start a horse in this. Like this is where they're going to start, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There is a lot of margin of error here. When people talk about a D-ring snaffle or a full cheek snaffle or a O-ring snaffle, what they're referring to, the word snaffle refers to the mouthpiece. So it means it breaks in the middle, like so. One break, one hinge. When they say D-ring, you see how the ring on the side of this is shaped like a D? Full cheek, you see the two bars? It means it goes all the way up and down beside the horse's head. Both of these are so when you pull one way or the other, it doesn't slide through their mouth. Then you have an O-ring. This is an O-ring snaffle. And depending on how big or small the O-ring is, the reason that people like this is how bendy and moving it is, but it has a tendency, if you get in a bind and you really pull on them, that it wants to go in their mouth. Another thing, mouthpieces. We have 3 here. This is the least aggressive. This is a French link or a dog bone. It's double jointed. The great intention behind it is that there's no pressure. I mean, essentially it's the smoothest thing you can get, and it doesn't even have a pinch point, and that was the thinking behind it. But a lot of times, thinking on paper and thinking in real life, it's the same difficulty that architects have with contractors. Well, on paper, everything works. You know, when you're drawing up a house plan, I mean, whatever you put on that paper, it works on the paper. But then when the contractor gets there and has to lift that, and it becomes a whole different thing. So same thing with training. We're not using the French link a lot because there's no repercussion. In our line of work, which is colt starting and problem horses, we're getting horses out of binds. They're spooked to this, or they're bucking for that, or they're doing, and we're showing them how not to. Well, it's very hard to teach the dog obedience with a harness. If they're willing to lay all into it, it's hard to say, hey, don't lay on me. You know, the harness is for pulling. It's not for obedience. So jumpers are real big into this. They kind of want to get pulled towards the jump, and they kind of want the horse to lay on them. So they like this. If you have a horse that's laying on you, that's not walking, that's not giving the face, that's not being soft, this is not really for you. This is to encourage the horse to grab the bridle. So I would use this for a horse that has just been traumatized to a bridle to the point that they're just abandoning it. Like they just won't touch it, they won't get up in it. And then I could use something like that to encourage them, hey, it's okay. But quite frankly, I can't remember the last horse. It's not even on a hanger because I can't remember the last horse that was so overly soft that it was a problem. Then you have a smooth bit. This is what we colt start in, what we put our young horses in. It's smooth, which is great. You get the left and right. And people talk about the pinching effect that a snaffle has. Well, that's its purpose. The idea, the only repercussion here is when you pull back on two reins, it collapses like so. Well, the horse has 2 bars here. You say, oh, well, this is going to poke him in the mouth. It will not poke them in the mouth because they have 2 bars, which is 2 gums, 2 bones, and the bones have teeth in between them, so they're not getting any closer together. So as long as they don't get any closer together, you can't make it collapse and do this unless their jaws were to, it's just not going to happen. Again, it's one of those things that, oh, don't do this because this will happen. Well, that only works on paper. In real life, yes, is there a pinching sensation? Yes, absolutely. But that's the whole point of it, is that they lay on you, that there's a certain level of discomfort, and whenever they give their face, it straightens out. When they lay on you, there's a certain level of discomfort, and when they give you their face, it flattens back out, wanting the horse to come to you, wanting the horse to be soft in the rein. A lot of times, this is not enough, especially for the horses that come to us that already have all this baggage, that already have been pulling on people, they've had all these different bridles in their mouth, in which case, that's what the twist is for. And the twist is big, way too thick to cut a horse or injure a horse or anything like that. This is demonified in Google, but also in Google, a lot of times they talk about extremes, and there's people who have that's a wire, like you have to look hard to see it. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a thick, just as thick as this, if not thicker than the colt starting bridle, but it has a twist on it. And what that allows you to do is when they grab a hold of you, instead of you playing tug of war, you can open and close your hand. If you ever want to know what a bridle is doing inside a horse's mouth, hold your finger out like this, and that represents the horse's mouth. That represents their bars. And you do just like this, and you pull it back and forth like this as if you're opening and closing your hand, and you'll feel. Well, what you'll feel here on this one is that means absolutely nothing. I could sit here and have this whole conversation on tack while doing this, and there's no repercussion, and we don't know why the horse is laying on us. It's the equivalent if you have a Rottweiler that's 120 pounds and they're laying on a flat collar. Right. Stop putting a flat collar on them. They're going to drag you. When they see a cat, you're going for a ride. They're going to either pull the leash from you or you're going to drag behind them because there's no repercussion. In the same instance, when I do it with this bridle and I hold my finger out and I start going left, right, I can feel it, the resistance. And though it doesn't hurt or it's not uncomfortable now, I know I wouldn't want to do this for very long. I wouldn't want to persist. So I'll retreat and then it all goes away. So you guys can pass those around and kind of feel the difference.
Does the weight on that cheek, that earring, that looks like a pretty heavy.
Right? So the question is, does weight on a bridle make a difference? Absolutely. I prefer a heavier bridle. I want to do less and get more. It just feels more stern. It just feels more solid. It feels more serious. It's not necessarily that it does anything different. The mechanism works the same if it was light or if it's heavy. But something about that weight, it just feels like it's more obvious when you pick up and when you release. It feels more obvious whenever you grab when you let go. So we've worked through and we got the horse working on a snaffle. The horse is stopping, the horse is backing, the horse is giving. Again, the next layer of training, the reason we're going to take a step forward is we're going to get the margin of the error even smaller. Now they have snaffle bit futurities and they have different, absolutely, you show those horses in a snaffle. But as you're finishing those horses and you're asking for more and more, the margins of error get smaller and smaller. So I have hundreds of clients, thousands of clients that ride just in the halter everywhere they go. Cool. If all you want to do is get from point A to point B, you want to go on a trail ride, you want to go on an obstacle course, you want to play soccer, you want to do something like that, the halter may be all you ever need for the rest of your life. But if you want to start getting more finesse, more competitive, more in the show ring, and you want to start asking for that next level, can you get it out of a halter? Absolutely. There's people who get it out of Western Basels. There's people who get it all out of a snaffle. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying the duration of time for that horse to come clear exactly what you want is going to be a lot longer. And I do not like a lack of clarity. I want to be as clear with my horse as possible because I find I make a lot happier horse. So you may think, oh, well, you're using a bigger bridle or you're using a shank or you're using a curb. Yeah, but I taught my horse how to do this in 15 days where you would take the next 2 years with that snaffle trying to get the horse to do half of what I'm doing. But since my horse in 1 or 2 days said, oh, I need to stay away from this, I need to hold my body like this, I need to pick my chest up, hold my head back, and I'll stay off of the pressure, and I'll just start working like this. 2 days, 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, the horse figured that out, and now for the next 2 years, my horse is functioning happily because I'm not constantly after them and after them and after them. That's what a lack of clarity does. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the big thing now are these comfort bits with all this tongue relief built in. So if I'm following your train of thought, it's better to teach the horse to provide their own release through movement of their head or getting off of the pressure than it is to just say, oh, it's just bothering my horse, I'm going to put a comfort bit.
Right, absolutely. So there's all this train of thought about comfort bit, smooth mount that, easy glide this, and you're absolutely right. On paper, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, your horse is pulling on you and it's throwing his head. Let's be softer and easier on the horse, and miraculously, they're going to get softer and easier with us. I love the thought. I love the sweetness and the intention behind that thought. But doing this professionally and riding 15 hours a day on problem horses, respect you, it's not given. You have to go earn it. So if the horse would just come off of the bridle, they'll find all the release they need. It's the same equivalent. In dogs, we kind of already have this understanding. In dogs, I guess because there's more dogs or more people do it, or for whatever reason, when the dog is pulling on you on the little harness, we move to a collar. The dog pulls on the collar, we go to a choke collar. The dog pulls on the choke collar, we go to a prong collar. The dog pulls on the prong collar, we go to an e-collar. We know that we step it up until the dog yields, and we know the dog gets the release from just acting, just do your job. It's simple, just do your job, and I won't touch you. The most well-trained dogs, the military and the police dogs and the obedience dogs and the bird dogs and the herding dogs, so many of them go around with a little black box on them. It's the most amount of pressure, but oftentimes it's the least used pressure. The person who doesn't want to use that, who wants the dog to be on a harness, is constantly, they're wrapping the leash around the flanks of the dog, and they're holding on them, and they're, look here, Nippy, come here, Nippy, don't go, and they're constantly nagging on them. It's the same exact thing with the horse, except whenever you do it, when the Nippy runs off, it doesn't hurt you. It's not a big deal. Okay, whenever Cookie runs off, it's going to be a problem. When Sugar Bear runs off with you and you're straddling her, sitting on her back, it's going to be a problem. So that's why I want my horse to give the pressure better versus start trying to give to them and give to them. And I've seen as ridiculousness as, I mean, the French Link was built just for that, for horses that were all pushing off in the bridle. Let's make them more comfortable. When I find that, I've seen is a foam bit, like a car wash foam, like you would wash a car with, on a strap with 2 rings on the side as a snaffle. I don't know what the horse would have to do to me to make me think this is how I'm going to ride this horse, but I would not ride that horse. If the horse is that against pressure that I have to put foam or a strap or a rubber dog play toy in their mouth to be able to ride them, me personally, I'm not looking to ride that horse because I feel like, oh, if I'm that worried about pissing you off, like you might get uncomfortable that you're going to just lose your marbles, well, I don't want to ride you. I don't want to tiptoe around the horse that I'm sitting on because I'm sitting on them. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. So the next step, yes, sir.
And the comfort relief, isn't it really a lot kind of marketing because they're going to say no tongue pressure, but it's
yes,
pressure on the bar.
absolutely. So much of the stuff is a marketing ploy. It sounds nice, and human nature wants to be nice. We love our horses. They're our life, our livelihood, our this, that, and the other. So absolutely, saying the spirit of this and the smooth that and the relief this and the easy that and the safety breakaway this or that, all those words sound lovely and they make millions of dollars in the industry, but so many of them end up having to come to me for me to fix them because they've been given so much freedom. Imagine you get an adult, oh, you don't want to work, you don't have to. Okay, yeah, you don't have to work, but you're going to be broke, you're not going to be able to eat. So we have to go to work. We have to do our job. In everything else in life, cause and effect, you know, you have the responsibilities. That's where your freedom comes from. You have to do your job. We want to sell this dream to our horses that, oh, there never has to be a bad day. There never has to be this. Just do your job, there won't be. But so many horses have been taught that, hey, it's okay. If you don't like the bridle, we'll give you a softer one and you can pull on that and then it won't make you uncomfortable. But now you can't stop them. Yeah, imagine, I don't like how the brakes sound, so I'm just going to take the brakes off. I don't like, hey, sometimes when I turn the car, it sounds funny, so I'm going to just pull the steering wheel off and put it in the back seat.
Just make right turns.
All right, so once we get through the snaffle work, we can go to a snaffle with shanks is usually the next thing. This is where I start introducing a curb chain, okay? This is a great starter here. This is a 6-inch Pelham. A Pelham refers to, it still has the snaffle effect. It still has rings on the side. So if you grab those shanks and it's too much for a horse, you can grab them by the side and still use it as a snaffle. Or you can go to the shank and go ahead and start introducing that curb chain. Where this does, where you start getting a change here, is now, and depending upon how you use the curb chain, it really affects how the horse works. So before we pull back, it puts a little pressure here. Now we pull towards us and we start getting some leverage. So this really gets where we can talk a lot by saying little. You know, everybody likes that kind of person who does what they says and say what they do. They mean it whether they say it or don't say it. This really gets you to a place where you have to communicate less. You have to talk less. That direct contact is great. Left is left, right is right, all those wonderful things. But you have to tell them. Yes, ma'am?
So would that be good for a gaited horse?
Yes, ma'am. She said, would this be good for a gaited horse? Absolutely. Having that little bit of leverage, it's going to be a lot easier. So our gaited horse is very similar to our dressage horse. Ultimately, we want them to poke their chest out, pick their head up, and drive their butt under them. A dressage horse, your English horse, your gaited horse, the same way, absolutely, because it's going to be so much easier to get this. Collection is simply the relationship between the gas pedal and the brake. They have to respect the gas pedal enough to go when you put a leg on them and ask them to go, but they have to respect the brake enough to stay away from it. So if they only respect the gas pedal, they're just gone and you're holding on for dear life and you're holding on hard and their nose is out. If they only respect the brake, you touch them with this, and they do this, but now they're not going anywhere. Well, that defeats the purpose as well. So collection, a dressage horse, a gaited horse, is a horse that you can drive up into the bridle, and they're still willing to go forward. So those two things coming together, and the reason that these are sought after by, I mean, pretty much all finished disciplines. Well, I mean, gaited, dressage, Western pleasure, reining. I mean, pick any choice, because less work on your end, more response on. Same reason that the highest trained dogs in the world have that little black box. A lot of times my father would go on duty as a canine officer, and he would leave, and his dog would have a little black box on his neck, and he would leave the remote at the house. Like I would come out in the morning and go to school, and it'd be sitting there on the kitchen table, because it wasn't about that. Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. By the time that you become a show gaited rider, you have a show horse, or you have a dressage horse, you're not touching the bridle anyway. But you need to have the bridle there for them to say, oh, I respect that, I know that, I'm going to go do my job. Same thing as with the snaffle. Say you have the horse that's just laying on that. I get a lot of gaited horses in, a lot of English horses in, that you put that curb on, and they're just laying on. They already have been accustomed. They should never lay on this, because if they're soft on the halter and they're soft on the snaffle, then that should be more than enough, and they should just be butter. Unfortunately, we get so many horses that come in that are already just steel mouth. They've already been pulled on so much. They've already laid on the leash so much. They've had that choke collar on them worked improperly for so long that they don't care. It's just you can get accustomed to anything in life. You see some people on TV like, how'd you live like that? Well, they just got accustomed to it. Same way, we have a twist here. So now whenever I open and close my hand, I get a little friction. I can get them off of that bridle. So these two are really, really good go-tos. Usually, in the course of 30 days, we're not getting too far past this. I mean, if everything's going the way that we want, we are in the halter, we're in the snaffle with shanks. That's about as far as we get. Around here, 30 days is kind of the norm. But we very rarely get too much further than this. All three of these levels, if I ever ask you to go to an obstacle course or go to Thunderdome, go play horse soccer, go show them cows, so that anything that you're going to do that you know you're trying to purposefully make that horse uncomfortable, we're never getting any further than these. Because up until this level, the first three levels, whether it's a halter, a snaffle, or a snaffle with shanks, these three levels still give you that lateral flexion that you can grab that horse's face, pull their face over their butt, and cross their back feet up. So all the way to this level, you can go to the obstacle course, you can go play soccer. You can purposely go out to make that horse uncomfortable so that you can fix the discomfort. So, you know, we're making horses uncomfortable all the time, spooking them, scaring them, tarps, you know, shooting guns, roping cows, doing things like that. You can still pull their face and take their butt until it becomes easy. Once you've got that down pat and the horse is going, and this is the place where we switch and we start really getting finished. So up until this point, we're not finished, in my opinion. Yes, ma'am.
What about a noseband?
Noseband, great question. So she's asking about a cavesson. So a cavesson, they come in many different shapes and sizes. We like these. They're very simple, easy for me to make. They're string. They have knots here. I can tighten them up or loosen them up. Every English person you've ever seen has a leather cavesson on. I put cavessons on for one or two reasons. One, your horse has a bad gaping problem. They're always messing with their mouth. They're always opening their mouth. Very rarely do I use it for that. Most of those horses, once they get soft, they stop opening their mouth. And it took me a while to figure that out. My father, Hall of Fame pasto trainer, lived by these. You weren't even allowed, in my childhood, you weren't allowed to put a bridle on a horse that you didn't put a noseband. And that's what I was raised. It wasn't until I got into Western work that broke my thinking. The other reason, and the reason I still use them and have them around, is when I'm driving a horse up into the bridle. When I'm pushing that horse into the bridle, I put the cavesson on so they don't get in the habit of opening their mouth. So when I'm pushing them up in there, it's no big deal. So depending on who you ask, I had one of these on in front of my reining mentor, my first reining mentor. He's like, does your horse have a problem? I was like, no. He's like, why do you have that on? I was like, because if the answer is because that's what we always done, that's a horrible answer. Oh, why do you do that? Well, it's because what my daddy did. That's a horrible answer. Why? You always want to be able to answer the why. The two reasons to use a cavesson is to stop a horse that won't stop with their mouth. The reason Western riders usually don't need it because they're not pushing up into the bridle. They're giving them the face. They're on a loose rein, so that horse should be able to carry their mouth shut. You're stopping, turning, bending, backing, doing all these things without grabbing the bridle, so you shouldn't need a cavesson. Once you get that gaited horse, that dressage horse, that jumping horse, that English horse that you're pushing into your hands, you're physically pushing them into your hands to have contact. So we want them to be quiet mouthed as well. This will get them to do that. So that's why I use a cavesson. All right. Now, this is the big thing. We work problem horses and colt starts, and what gives us our success are these things. Because we get left and right, and they figure out, I can't run with you, I can't buck with you, I can't rear with you. We all have the understanding that everything that doesn't behoove your health and well-being happens in a straight line. Bucking, running, rearing, flipping over backwards, running backwards. All these things happen in a straight line with their back feet pushing. Okay? You've never seen a horse buck with their back feet crossed. You've never seen a horse cross the Kentucky Derby line with their back feet crossed. You've never seen a rearing Spanish horse or Lusitano with their back feet crossed. Being able to cross a horse's back feet is your ability to take their motor and their strength away from them. So that comes from being able to take their face to the side, and cross over their back feet. This is where you get that type of obedience, that type of, I'm not going to try my own thing because I know what you're going to do to me. That's your ace in the hole. Now you have a horse that has earned your trust. You say, I know you. I trust you. You're not going to try to hurt me. You're not going to try to take advantage of me. Let's go ahead and get you finished up. Whatever direction you want. Dressage, reining, cutting, whatever level it is, whatever you're trying to finish, show ring in gaited horses, we need to straighten them back up to power them back up. So where so many people mess up is they straighten them up and power them up before they have the ultimate respect out of them, and then those horses fall apart when they get scared or get spooked. A horse is a great butt. Oh man, horses have so many butts. A horse is a great butt. Well, that's because they learned from the beginning, and I'm guilty of this. I did this in the beginning. When I was raised on the Paso farm, we were thinking about the show ring from day one. So from day one, somebody had them by the nose or had them by the halter, and somebody else got on and held two hands, and we rode them in a straight line. Okay? That was cute. It took a long time to get the horse to figure out their job. And if those horses got spooked, we didn't have enough face and butt so that horse could take us for a ride whenever they wanted to. So we just tried to put in so many wet saddle pads that the horse wouldn't, because the horse was comfortable enough. But at any given time, if a little kid jumped out of the stands to chase his cotton candy in the aluminum bleachers, that horse would jump off of the fence and take you for a ride, and you'd be holding on, hoping that it worked. So that's what these things do to fix that. Now when we start putting them back together, these are bars. They have the word tongue relief. That tongue relief just means that it's not a straight bar. Let me see if I have a straight bar over here. This is one of the only straight bars. So that's just a complete straight bar, but these are considered bars too. This one I got at the School of Equestrian Art in Spain, dressage bit. This is what I'm using for most of my roping horses, my reining horses, Western work. This is a gaited bit. You notice the shank goes back. So let's talk about shanks. The straighter the shank is, the more leverage it has. Okay, so the more the shank comes back to you. So this is going to be the weakest of the three because you see the shank really curves back towards the person. Okay. You have your shorter shank and your longer shank. Your short shank, this is a 2-inch shank. This is going to be really to get that horse's head up. There's not a lot of leverage to put the horse's head down. What you're trying to do is you're trying to hold this horse's head up. So this is going to be your dressage style bit, good for a gaited horse, good for a dressage horse, but it's going to give you this. It's going to poke their chest out, it's going to pick their head up, and you're going to leave your hands in one place. Notice as we start getting further and further away, the movement of the bridle start leaving. So now this doesn't even break in the middle anymore. So this has gotten even more solid. We went from a rope to a snaffle that everything gave, to a snaffle with shanks that bent in the middle and the shanks swiveled. Now the shanks swivel, but the mouthpiece doesn't. So it takes another level of education for your horse to be able to accept this and say, okay. Because again, the walls are closing in on them. The confinement in which they're allowed to work, they went from a big, huge office to work in, now they're in a cubicle. They have to work within these confines, which is fine as long as they understand that, but a lot of horses don't understand that, and that's why they have a problem with it. So you see this one still has a little wiggle. This dressage bit is completely welded solid. There is no movement. Saying, well, Michael, that's kind of horrible. It's kind of harsh. You are trying to make a horse that looks like a statue and be the most consistent thing and go win the Olympics. We need the most consistent bridle that we can get. There's nothing more consistent than welded solid. Then you put that curb chain where it's almost touching them as we drive around, and then you match that with a rider who is skilled enough not to move their hands for the whole ride, walk, trot, canter, and you have just made something that comes in and leaves the same way. When we were winning national championships and world championships, it seemed like our horses were getting better and other people's horses were getting worse. It's not that. We came in and we left an hour later the exact same way that we came in, and everybody else's horse come in and they start getting worse. They start getting pissed off. They start getting tired. They start shaking their head. They start doing this. They start doing that. They start looking for a way out, and our horses come in and just nothing moved but their feet and their ears. And when we asked for transitions, for turns, for stops, for backs, for this, for that, we never moved. Everything was just off of our seat. Everything was in between my horse and myself. Nobody else could see it. And having a bridle that has very little give in it and that's very stationary allows that horse to get real comfortable. You notice this is a rusty bit that looks like it's 100 years old. I got this bit in 2018. The Spaniards, they want a rusty bit. The old-time trainers, they want a rusty bit. They don't want stainless. Stainless is for us, not for the horse. When we get stainless, it's because, oh, it looks pretty, it looks good. Yeah, but this doesn't taste good to them, and it doesn't create the most saliva for them. This rust here, whenever they grab a hold of this, they get a lot of saliva, and that saliva makes them a lot more comfortable. As the shanks get longer, and I got these two bits out because they're more or less the same mouthpiece. As the shanks get longer, this is going to be a lot more what you see on a reining horse, on a Western horse. And what we're going to do is, now we're riding on loose rein, and you're going to see people pick the rein up. Well, as we pick the rein up over the horse's ears, over the horse's neck, we pick that hand up, you're dropping that head down. So we pick those reins up. Of course, we're neck reining at this time. We pick those reins up, it puts that horse's head down. So that's why you'll see people riding around and they'll pick up. Well, that's the mechanism that's working there. It's putting their head down.
Is it head down and chin in both?
Well, yeah. So absolutely. So watch my hand here. Whenever I pick up, it's my chin that goes first. It's my bottom jaw that goes first. The head follows the jaw, and especially on that Western horse, you've been training them to put their head down. You've been training them to look for that release. So you pick up, it takes their bottom jaw from them, and you give it back to them, and then now they're on a loose rein again.
So if you really get them doing that with that, they'll...
Absolutely. So she said, you really get them doing with this? Absolutely. The difference here is, here you're not going to get where you're picking up too much. You're going to be pulling towards yourself a little bit. Here, this is solid, and you're going to start being able to pick upward. So I really don't switch my flexing. In all this direct contact, and even the beginning here, the reins, when I want to soften them, the reins are coming to me, and I'm softening to me. When I get over into the solid bridle, there is no flexion left and right because this is so smooth in the mouth that you pulling left and right or seesawing. I see people with a bridle like this and, okay. Imagine trying to cut a hay string with this. Like nothing's happening. Like you're seesawing for no reason. You're nagging the horse. You're making the horse uncomfortable for no reason. Not uncomfortable in a good way to make a change. You're trying to beat in a screw with the side of the drill. It's just not built for that. It's built for this. This is where the discomfort comes from, or the pressure comes from. It's from picking up. And then that complete release, you got a tongue relief, you got a smooth bridle. So this is going to be very comfortable for the horse. And it never folds on them. It never pinches them. So this is actually going to be a lot comfortable.
Michael, I have a question. With that bit, when you're doing a finished flex, when we were with Evans,
Right.
we were doing a finished flex, and we were using a bit like that.
Yes.
What's
Okay, so the difference here is we're going to do very little flexing with this bridle. By this time we already got a soft horse, and we might tip him like inside the shoulders. We go from all those things, we're flexing them, to our leg, we're coming here. We might even start coming there and dropping their head in between. When we get to a finished bridle, you're not thinking flex. I start by flexing, but I'm literally flexing from here to here, inside the shoulders, because it's not really built for lateral flexion. I just want to see that I can get an eye in either direction and that they stay soft. More importantly, every time that I switch, I want to have common ground. So every time that I switch from any of these, I go back to first grade where I'm asking my horse to walk a circle around me and give me their face. So every time that I switch, I'm letting them know, hey, I'm about to use this. And most of the time, you're not going to have any issues. Sometimes you're going to make a switch and the horse is going to go, what's that? And you say, stay in first grade. And I say, oh, okay. I don't know what this bridle is, but I know how to do first grade, which is look at you and walk in a circle. So you're going to get to like the most advanced. This is like the most advanced in reining and in dressage. Again, I got this in my trip to Spain. You got the exact same mouthpiece as that, but you've got the longer shanks. Again, I got asked earlier, what are the long shanks for? The long shanks are more leverage, right? And you do less, you get more. So you want to get to the point where you have something that they respect so much you have to do nothing with it. I don't want to have to grab it. I don't want to have to hold it. I want to just be able to put my hands in one place. That's like drawing a line in the sand, and I say, hey, as long as you stay behind this line, you are completely and utterly free. I won't grab anymore. Once I set my hands will not do this. They will not do this. I will